Welcome back, everyone, to another Drum Dog podcast. We have another very special guest today, Ollie. I first we saw you slash met you at the Dorset Drum Festival. Was it Dorset?
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
Dorset Drum Festival. So Ollie Usiskin, drum drummer producer as well.
I'm not a producer.
No, I was
No,
I was
no.
just trying to big you up as much as I can. Um,
Yeah, no.
but kind of session musician, drummer, a very I mean going through your credit list, which we'll obviously get into a lot to talk about, and a large breadth of kind of genres and musicians that you've played with. But yeah, I saw Ollie at the Dorset Drum Festival, and you got talking to Simon, who's a part of Drum Dog, and then I think there was just a lot of enthusiasm on both parts to do something, and so we're starting off with a podcast. But I think it would be really cool to record some videos or some lessons with you as well at some point.
Yeah, sounds great.
Perfect. Well, I mean, thank you for coming on as well and giving up your time. You were just saying that it's a busy time, as I imagine it always is for a session musician. So, I mean, do you want to? Shall we start off there? Do you want to tell us a bit about how you're filling your days these days?
Yeah, sure. Uh, just like to say thank you also to you, Dan, for having me on this interview. Um, and yeah, currently well, I've just finished working on an album that I recorded drums on, which is co-produced by the bassist producer Jimmy Haslip.
Hmm.
And Jimmy's background, he's American musician, bass player, electric bass player, and he's based in the LA area. And he produces a lot of uh, albums with a lot of the LA session guys on the scene there.
Mm.
And his background is he was the co-founder of the jazz group, the Yellowjackets.
Yeah.
And he, toured and recorded with that band for many, many years. And then since then, he's toured with the guitarist Alan Holdsworth. And he also is part of Jeff Lorber, the keyboard player's touring group. And he produces and has produced a lot of Jeff's album releases. Um, and he also currently is about to tour with Mike Stern, the guitarist who he's toured with a lot, and also the New York-based guitarist Oz Noy.
Mm.
And so he works with a lot of different artists live, as well as a producer. But I first met Jimmy at Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club here in London, where I'm based, and we I used to go down to Ronnie Scott's quite often to see different bands, and also just because I'm friends with quite a few uh, visiting artists, that musicians that come over from the States.
Mm.
So having like known quite a few of those guys, I just ended up being at a show Jimmy was playing, and we just ended up sitting down and having a chat together, and we sort of kept in touch over a period of time. And then um, uh, couple of years, some years back, just after COVID, uh, I was um, I was doing some sort of rehearsal sessions with an electric cello player called Max Oliver, and we were doing some kind of experimental kind of jazz rock, if you call it, freestyle, avant-garde, improvisational playing together as cello and drums, which we thought was quite unusual. And we used to record a lot of our rehearsals, and then we sort of invested in a microphone, and Max, the cello player, had a little mixing desk, and so we got quite a nice recording of a lot of the stuff. And then I was kind of going through the stuff. I think it was during the COVID lockdown period. I was kind of going through a lot of this recording stuff that we had um, recorded. So I think I think Max and I started to play together before. I think, yeah, that's right. It was. I'm getting confused now. It was before the COVID lockdowns. So yeah. So as I said, going back, yeah. So with the COVID lockdowns, I kind of had time to go through a lot of the recording stuff that we'd done together, and picked out the best bits. And I just sort of, said to Max, "Hey, this stuff sounds really good. We should think about releasing it." So then I actually approached Jimmy about it, because I knew that he worked on productions of music, and he really liked what we were doing. And so he got involved as executive producer on the record. And then I actually mixed the tracks myself, and got someone else to master them. And then we ended up releasing it on a label called Slam, and the album's called Ollie Usiskin Max Oliver Duo. And it's available now on all online platforms. And then continuing the sort of relationship, with myself and Jimmy. I ended up doing. I had a band a couple of years ago, just because I was doing a lot of my own performances, and I had this group that I formed, and it was with a guitarist from Australia, originally from Australia, called Carl Orr. And Carl's background is that, if you're not familiar with him, or if you haven't heard his name, he was in Billy Cobham, the drummer's group, touring group, quite some years back, when Gary Husband, the drummer stroke keyboard player, was playing with Billy's band. Originally, that is. So that's Carl's background, that he toured with Billy Cobham for several years. And then later on, more recently, he was in the backing band for Sting, the singer. He had a show called The Last Ship, and it toured in England. And Carl was part of that touring band, working with Sting on The Last Ship. I think it was a musical. And so that's Carl's background. And the bass player we ended up working with is a bass player called Rob Statham, who's an electric bass player from England. And Rob's background is he's worked with people like Keith Emerson. He's also when the trumpet player was alive, he worked with Ian Carr. Ian Carr's Nucleus. It was Ian's band at the time. And then also now Rob has for many years played with the guitarist from Soft Machine, John Etheridge. John has a tribute band to Frank Zappa called Zappatistas, and Rob's the bass player in that band. So So yeah, so we're doing a lot of gigs together as a band, and the band worked really well together. And again, similar thing, you know, I recorded some of the live performances with the band, and ended up sending some of it to Jimmy. And you know, Jimmy really liked what we were doing,
Mm.
you know, with the trio. And then he just said, look, if you guys ever need, you know, help with anything, please let me know. And then we decided to go into the studio and do an album. And the album turned out to be all originals, written, half of them written by Carl, the guitarist, and half written by the bass player Rob.
Mm-hmm.
And the album, it came out really, really great. I was really, really pleased with it. It was uh, well, again, Jimmy was the co-stroke executive producer on the album,
Mm-hmm.
um, and also mixed it. And the producer was my engineer currently, who's an amazing musician as well, called a guitarist called Enrico Pinna, who's from Italy.
Mm.
And he's got this amazing studio that I use, which is on a longboat. So it's like a canal, like a boat on a canal.
Wow, is this in London?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's incredible. It's in Tottenham, in the Tottenham Hale area, and
Okay.
it's on the river, and it's this amazing like boat.
Yeah.
Um, but the amazing thing about Enrico's studio is you know, when you go down the steps and you're in the boat, it's almost like you you're not in a boat, you're
Yeah.
you know, in a studio. You know, he's got the live room, he's got, you know, the desk room where he's got all the mastering suite as well and everything,
Wow.
and the sound desk. Yeah, so it's an amazing place. And yeah, so he's produced the record, and like I said, it came out really great. It was reviewed in Jazzwise magazine, had a really nice review in that, and uh, you know, some other reviews. And yeah, this I've actually got a. So this is the for anyone that's interested. That's a copy of the album. That's a copy of the CD. There. That's the back of the CD. I don't know if you can see a picture of the band there.
Yeah.
But it's called the album's called Trio Zone, and it's available on all online platforms. And if you put my name, Ollie Usiskin, Trio Zone, into a Google search, there's a Bandcamp link, and selling it on Bandcamp. And you know, it's a reasonable cost. I've priced it. I've priced it reasonably.
Nice.
But yeah, it's a really nice record. I'm really happy with it. And the reason I'm happy with it is because as a drummer, you know, when like us drummers, we can do it. We could, if we bring out a record, we can do a record that really kind of exhibits our drumming. Um, but uh, I I actually, you know, for me, you know, I could have gone down that direction and done a more drumistic record, which I guess the first album I did, the with the electric cello
The
player,
more improv
is
one.
yeah, it is
Yeah.
more kind of off the wall drumming.
Okay.
But this album that's currently available, Trio Zone,
Mm.
I just think it's really nice music, and it's a nice it's a nice kind of showcase of that particular trio,
Yeah.
and our time together. Very sadly, the band expanded shortly after doing the recording because Carl Orr, the guitarist, had to move to Australia.
Right.
So that was really sad because you know, I did have plans to kind of do more stuff with that project.
Yeah.
But coming to more recent, so the album that I've just been involved with Jimmy Haslip is the first album where uh, I've actually played on the record with Jimmy playing the bass,
Mm.
and it's an album. It's a friend of mine who I have done uh, an album project with before, but the album, you know, the album came out great, but we only produced some CDs for it. And it wasn't actually it wasn't actually officially released at the time. Um, it was quite some years ago, and so what we decided what we wanted to do, and what my friend wanted to do is make a more current day, bunch of tracks, enough for an album, and then release his record. And his background, his name's Ross Lardner. He's a guitarist, and it's his project. And the name of the project is Chrono Jazz, and the album's going to be called Interplanetary Funk. Um, and Ross's background is he toured when he was in his 20s with this group called the Bay City Rollers,
Mm.
a very famous group in their time. And so he's done some really big gigs and traveled the world with that band. And then later on, he went on to doing quite a few shows with the band Boney M.
Mm.
I think they're like a group from the 70s, or I think that genre. But he toured in Russia with Boney M, and some other places in Europe as well. And yeah, so uh, Ross is very influenced by Alan Holdsworth, the guitarist. So his music, you know, is it has the sort of style of Alan Holdsworth, but it's his own take on it.
Mm.
And so it's a very original take on the Alan Holdsworth style of playing. And Ross, created these tracks, which have got a kind of funk edge to them. So they're very groove kind of orientated, a lot of them. So that was the direction he wanted to go in, because the album that we did before was more kind of like more sort of jazz rock kind of based, and this is more like a kind of jazz rock but with kind of some solid funk grooves
Okay.
integrated into the music. So it makes it more current day and more commercial. And again, we sent some of the tracks to Jimmy. Jimmy really liked the project.
Mm.
Obviously, uh, Jimmy, having worked with Alan Holdsworth, really appreciated what this music that Ross had created, and
Yeah.
he found it really interesting. So he offered to help us and the project. And then what happened is, after hearing the tracks, he actually offered to play the bass on the whole of the album, which was like a real honor, for Ross and myself
Yeah.
to have Jimmy with his experience and reputation,
Yeah.
working with us. And so yeah, so it's really exciting. We've done the album. It's been mixed by Jimmy's engineer,
Mm.
and mastered now. And we're looking for a label
Yeah.
and distribution. So
Incredible.
if there's anyone out there
Uh,
that wants to
this
that
is
wants to, yeah,
the
help
call
us
out.
out,
Um,
please get in touch.
it's
Yeah.
we could create like a mind map of all of the incredible musicians that you've mentioned, and I think day to day, you listen to an album from the 70s or the 80s, jazz album, fusion, jazz funk, whatever, and it's like you don't realize just how big that whole world is in terms of the musicians and who they've played with and who they've played with. What does it feel like to work on projects or be in a studio with someone that's has played with these huge names like Billy Cobham and Yellowjackets and Alan Holdsworth and other people like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that because what I've learned is that uh, so back in quite some years back, I had the opportunity to work with the actor Sir Christopher Lee,
Hmm.
who starred in obviously he was famous for being in the Hammer Dracula films, and then later in his career he ended up being in some really huge films like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, The Hobbit, and Star Wars.
Hmm.
um, and he was obviously in other like cult films like The Wicker Man
Yeah.
and James Bond, obviously the man with the golden gun. Um, but I did meet Sir Christopher quite a few times because I was working on music in productions of music with him, with his manager, and every time I met Christopher Lee, it was like, oh my God, this is Christopher Lee. I grew up like watching his films, and I was really kind of like starstruck and
Hmm.
didn't really know what to say.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, but but I mean, I think the thing is what what we as musicians have to remember is we have, like, what I've learned personally from being friends and knowing knowing a lot of musicians who have played with these incredible people and had this incredible history, is that we're, at the end of the day, we're all human beings, we're all people, so what I mean by that is us as drummers, we idolize, we can idolize some of these drum figures, and we how can I say, because we live in a kind of celebrity type of world.
Hmm.
You've got that celebrity culture where everyone wants to get a picture with people, and
Yeah.
and everyone wants to like put films up on YouTube, and all of this stuff, when you go and see a gig or whatever it is. But I think at the end of the day, we all have to remember that all these great musicians that we've looked up to, they're, at the end of the day, they're all human beings, and they've all got their own personalities, and they've all got their own lives as well. So as much as it's understandable as musicians who want to develop ourselves and improve our own playing, I think we shouldn't make the mistake of being too idealistic with people, because then it just spoils that moment, when
Yeah.
you meet them. And I've I've experienced that myself, like I was telling you about when I met Christopher Lee. And then I look back to that period, and I think to myself, wow, it's a shame that I was so starstruck at the time, because I
Hmm.
didn't really get a chance to sort of get to know Sir Christopher, and
Yeah.
and really talk to him properly. And because I was so, at the time, I was so in awe of him, and
Yeah.
starstruck,
And I.
and but what I've learned is to be a lot more down to earth
Yeah.
with a lot of these musicians that I've had the honor and blessing to work with.
Hmm.
um and I think that helps your relations with them, because it's like, you know, you go to a concert and then you meet one of your heroes and you're like, oh, oh, hi, you know, you know, and you're kind of shaking and you're like, you don't know what to say, you know. But if you just kind of, if you sort of relax, you know, and just be more down to earth, then a lot of times that gets that reaction from them, and then that's how you end up forming relations with people, you
Yeah,
know.
exactly.
And it's helped me a lot because I'm, you know, I can be a bit of a nervous person at times, and you know, and sort of like I said, be a bit starstruck, and
Mm.
but I've learned to be more relaxed,
Yeah,
and it's helped my relations a lot, you know, with some of the people that I've ended up working with, and so yeah, I suppose that's in answer to your question. That's what I would say.
yeah,
Is that I just treat all, you know, all the people I've had the honor to meet and become friends with and work with, you know, I just treat them all as um, you know, down to earth people that have their own lives, that have their
sure.
own, you know, have their own you know, experiences and personalities, and I think it really helps, you know, when you're working with people to have that kind of approach, you know.
Yeah,
You know.
I think that's very kind of wise and grounded advice. I think certainly something I'll try to bear in mind going forwards, because it just kind of diffuses the situation and just makes it like you're just two people talking, and you need to set aside that one of them may be the, you know, one of the greatest drummers or musicians ever. You just kind of need to put that on 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 ice for a moment.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a bit more about you and your playing, your technique, because I mean I saw you play at the Dorset Drum Festival, and I think the feel and the touch when you were playing was fantastic. And at least for what you played on that day, rooted in a lot of kind of jazz fusiony um, flavors. But you're also, and as your credit list kind of demonstrates, you expand beyond jazz. I mean, the Christopher Lee album was it was like a full on metal album, right?
Yeah.
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 Um, so I wanted to say, like, how easy is it for you to switch gears from one genre to another? And a little follow up question is if there's one album in particular that has been like a really key reference point for your drumming style.
Yeah. Um, okay, that's a good question. So I think I've heard a couple of other drummers say this, and I would consider myself a similar type of player, that I'm a very much like a chameleon type. So I think because when I was growing up, you know, a lot of my favorite drummers were a lot of these session guys, that uh, you know, a lot of these session guys that can play all different styles,
Mm,
and I wanted to be like them. You know, I wanted to be someone that wasn't, because you know, I have utmost respect, and I know that there are incredible musicians that specialize in, you know, rock drummers or jazz drummers, or, you know, specific styles, and I have the utmost respect for them, you know, and that, you know, respect the fact that they've chosen to just, you know, specialize in and be involved in a specific style. But for me personally, um, I wanted to, because I think also because when I was growing up, you know, I used to play a lot to records, and I didn't just used to play to one particular style. You know, I used to like, I mean, I some of the bands I grew up playing to records. I used to play to bands like Dire Straits, Level 42.
mm,
Loved that band. Loved um, trying to think of the other bands I used to like. Well, Iron Maiden. I used to really be a big Maiden fan, and then later on, you know, bands like Van Halen. I used to like, you know, all this fusion stuff. John Scofield, you know, with Dennis Chambers and on drums, and then I used to like uh, earlier on, I used to like stuff like Dave. My dad turned me on to people like Dave Brubeck, you know, Take Five with Joe Morello, and then um, other stuff like Art Blakey. You know, I used to play to Something Else, Cannonball Adderley album, Something Else. I think I can't remember. I know the album was called Something Else. It might not have been Cannonball Adderley, so forgive me if I got that wrong. But with that album had Art Blakey on it, and then I used to later on I used to like a lot of the Miles Davis albums, like ESP with Tony Williams, and Nefertiti, and then Live in Europe with Miles with Tony as well, and then all the John Coltrane stuff with Elvin Jones on drums, and um, you know, some of the other Miles Davis albums with Philly Joe Jones, and then I mean, there's just so much, you know, like it's even like John Scofield's album with Omar Kim. I used to love that album, um, and yeah, but anyway, coming back to what I was saying, I mean, a lot of these drummers that I was listening to, they were just very like take Dennis Chambers, Omar Hakim, you know, Billy Cobham, Tony Williams, and then you know, later on people like, you know, Vinnie Colaiuta, Simon Phillips, Dave Weckl, um, uh, I mean, there's just so many. There's just so many to Jeff Beccaro, and then, you know, current day like Bill Stewart, you know, um, then, you know, the jazz vein, you know, like I said, Tony Williams, Elvin Jones, Jack DeJohnette, Roy Haynes. You know, I mean, it would be selfish of me, like, to just, like I've just mentioned that some of these guys, but there's so many, you know, people that have influenced me personally that I've listened to music. You know, there's just so many great, incredible drummers that have influenced me over the years. But like I said, some of these guys, you know, they've because of their careers, they've ended up working with so many different people, and you know, they've ended up playing with, you know, sort of singer-songwriters
Yeah.
doing more like kind of rock pop stuff, and then they've gone and done you know, jazz gigs, you know, with
Mm.
a jazz artist, and they've gone and played, you know, on, you know. So I mean, my point is I kind of wanted to lean towards that, being able to and the thing is, the other thing is, the other thing I want to point out is for anyone that's thinking about becoming a session musician, that's someone that is puts themselves out for hire, you know, playing all different genres
Mm.
professionally as a musician, is that I'm not one of these guys that I won't like turn up to a session unprepared. Like, I always want to make sure that I've thoroughly learnt, and that's rehearsals as well with bands, gigs, anything I'm doing. I'm always like to prepare in advance for what I'm doing, because I don't want to go and let down the client. You know, I
Of
don't want to
course.
go into a recording session and then they've sent me the tracks and then I kind of half learn them, and then they're complaining
Yeah.
because there's certain sections I'm not getting right. So I always like to prepare. And so there's one story where, like, for instance, when I recorded the heavy metal album, Charlemagne, with for the actor Christopher Lee. That was all. You know, a lot of it was double kick drum work with, you know, double pedal. Now, I didn't really have, I played double pedal in the past, and even when I was a child, you know, I had a double pedal when double pedals came out. But I, you know, around that time, it wasn't like in my gigging setup a double pedal.
Yeah.
So because it wasn't, and all of the drum parts were with double kick, a lot of them on this album, uh, I literally went into a practice room for several days, and I practiced to all of the tracks. I learnt all the parts by ear, and I made sure I thoroughly knew like all of the double pedal work and patterns really accurately before I went and did any of those sessions for that album. And it paid off because, you know, I went in and did the first session. We recorded the album in, I think it was 2 sittings. I might have got that wrong, but I literally nearly did, and I think I practically nearly did the whole of the record in one session, because I kind of am like that. Like when I get into the studio, I've got a lot of energy, and a lot of the time I can pull a lot of stuff off, you know. So I'm kind of very good in that environment, and I'm also very comfortable playing to a click track, you know, which can put some people off, you know, if you're not used to it. But me myself, you know, I've been in situations where I've had to play in a band with backing tracks and click tracks, and it's something that I've just over the years, you know, become comfortable doing.
Yeah.
So I'm not threatened by it. Like I'll go into a studio, record an album, and they're like, okay, we want to do it to a click, and the, you know, the panic buttons don't go off. You know, I'm just like, great, you know. And I mean, I recently did a session, and it was only 3 tracks, but it was all to a click track, and I was just felt so at home with the whole thing, so comfortable, just
Yeah.
bang, locked in straight
Yeah.
away. Everything was fine. Learnt the songs, you know, rehearsed them, you know, really well, and there was just no problem at all. So yeah, so what I'm saying is, you know, I just fully prepared for the you know, for the Christopher Lee album, and then when it came to doing it, it was a lot easier, you know, to pull off all of the double kick work. You know, so, but the same thing goes, because of your question about the stars and stuff. The same thing goes with, if I was preparing to do like a jazz album, for instance, you know, I might, prior to doing it, listen to some albums that I like to get some you know, inspiration, you know, and then that way, you know, I'll go into the studio and I'll be really inspired by some of the music I've heard, and it might give me some creativity, you know, ideas, you know, and stuff, and so yeah, so yeah, so that's kind of it really. And then as far as like what you were asking about, an album that's really influenced me, uh, you know, I think one of the albums that I've listened to in the past, you know, countless times over and over again, is got to be Tony Williams' Lifetime. And it's you know, it's the band that Tony had with Alan Holdsworth, Alan Pasqua, and the uh, Jack Bruce was the bass player, um, in one formation of that band, and then there was another formation, um, but yeah, that I mean that you know, that was just really influential on my playing. You know, the stuff that Tony was playing was so unique on that album. It's unlike any other drummer, that I'd heard. And it really, because it was a mixture of jazz and rock, and obviously Tony was such a master at both styles, and he was really interesting because if you don't already know this, people have told me that I think when Tony was, when he was a really young guy, 17 years old, playing with Miles Davis,
Yeah.
doing all this incredible fast tempos and playing these incredible in this incredible jazz group with Herbie, Ron Carter, and Miles, um, and Wayne Shorter. I apparently Tony was listening a lot to Keith Moon, so he was listening to The Who, which are a rock band. So that kind of goes to show, the versatility of Tony. And then when you listen to like that Tony Williams Lifetime album, it's just got that crossover of jazz and rock, and it's just so unique. The performance on that record is just so unique. It's just it really. I could just listen to that album over and over again and just never, just always be inspired by it. And uh, I actually had the honor of meeting Tony when he was alive several times. When I was studying at Berklee College of Music, it's the first time I went to see Tony play. He was playing in a hotel music venue called the Regatta. I think it was called the Regatta Bar in a hotel, and I went, and it's quite a funny story. Like, I'd never seen Tony play before, and it was with his own band. He had a band with it was Ira Coleman, I think, Mulgrew Miller, Billy Pierce, and uh, trying to remember Wallace Roney, and he had this quintet, and I never see, I'd never seen Tony play ever, and so there was like a table right near the drums, so like Tony's there, and then there was a table like literally, like there opposite the drums,
Yeah.
and I thought, right, I'm gonna sit right, right in front of the drums. And little did I know that I was gonna get absolutely, blown away by the sheer energy of Tony's playing. It was just literally like a tornado being thrown at you. It was
Yeah.
just the energy was just it's just the power was just like incredible. And I kind of was sitting there, like on the edge of my seat, and all this energy is just being thrown off the stage, and it's just incredible experience, and then I was just so inspired that I went back actually the next night and I saw the band again. And then funny story is that I sort of waited around after the second show because I was so sort of like in shock after the performance. I
Yeah.
just thought, oh, I've got to meet Tony. This is incredible, experience. And then I actually met Tony briefly, and I got to speak to him briefly, and he gave me a little bit of advice, and then I just ended up talking to his manager at the time, and it was quite interesting because at the time, like I said, I was studying at Berklee College of Music, so I was enrolled in the course, and his manager just said, "Hey, look, Tony, thinks you're cool." Because obviously he just met me. He said, "Tony thinks you're cool." He said, he's looking, we're looking for someone to go on the road with us. We've got a tour coming up and we need someone to help Tony with the drums. Here's my card. Get in touch with me if you're interested. So literally I was offered the chance of going on the road as Tony's drum tech.
Wow.
Yeah,
And what? So
and
what happened?
well, it's one of my deep regrets in life, Dan,
Oh,
actually, that I didn't take up the offer, because obviously I was enrolled. You know, my
right.
family had paid a lot of money for me to, you know, Berklee College of Music is not cheap, you
No.
know, and I was, you know, I was on the course, so I couldn't just kind of leave.
Yeah.
So I finished the course, and then I actually ended up going back to London. So I sadly didn't never took up the offer. But
Ah.
what was nice is that Tony then ended up coming to London, and he played a concert with the Tribute to Mars band,
Mm.
which is an incredible group. There's actually a live album available of that band, which is I'd strongly recommend you get. Um, I think it's just called A Tribute to Mars.
Mm.
But again, Wallace Roney is the trumpet player. It was the trumpet player in that was trumpet player in that band. And yeah, it's incredible group. And um, I went to the Royal Albert Hall, and uh, Tony's manager, you know, was there, and he remembered me from Boston, you know, meeting me at Tony's gig, and he says, you know, would you like to come to meet Tony? And I was like, oh, great. So he took me backstage at the Royal Albert Hall to Tony's dressing room, and he just took me there, and Tony was on his own, and he said, hey, Tony, this is this guy, you know, wants to say hello. And then he just left me there with Tony. And I think Tony was in the mindset, sort of pre-show mindset.
Mm.
So
Mm.
he you know, he just kind of wanted to, I think, be on his own. So I kind of kept the conversation short and just said I was really looking forward to hearing, you know, him play the show, and he was, you know, very nice. And yeah, and that's so they yeah, so I got to meet Tony twice, and then actually after that show I went backstage and I met Herbie Hancock.
Wow. As
Yeah, and Herbie actually gave me his business card,
ah,
which was, yeah, you know, Herbie gave me his business card as well.
incredible.
Um,
You must have an incredible collection of business cards from top musicians by this
not
point.
well, not really,
Ah,
not really, but no, I mean it's a real honor to meet any of these guys, you
oh
know,
yeah.
because they're just like living legends.
Yeah.
And um, you know, but like I said, you know, they're all these people, they're just, at the end of the day, they're all human beings. They've got their own lives, and you know, that's that's the thing, is we just have to respect and remember the fact that they're all just, you know, as much as we can idolize these people, and you know, and you know, sort of have that, you know, that sort of respect for them, you know, when, you know, it's important, I think, that when we meet them in person, that we humble ourselves and just be very down to
For sure.
earth, because I think that that helps form relations, you know, with people, you know, when
For
you
sure.
meet them,
For
you know.
sure.
But yeah.
I initially I had one more question, but one of the things you said made me add another one. Um, when you met Tony for the first time in Boston, and you mentioned he gave you some advice,
Yeah.
are you open to sharing that advice, or is it top secret, or if you
Yeah,
remember it?
yeah. I mean, it was it was basically he was sort of saying how there's different parts. There were like different parts of the world where, you know, if you want to go and work playing a certain genre of music, that he was saying. So he said something like, if you want to play rock, go to, you know, you go to LA. If you want to play jazz, you go to New Orleans. Or, I
Mm,
mean, to be honest, it was such a long time ago, Dan. It's hard for me to really remember exactly what he said, but it was something along those
yeah,
lines. Like, if you want to play jazz, go to this area. If you want to play rock, you know, go to that area, you know.
right,
But but it wasn't a long conversation, because I think Tony was quite tired, you know, he was
sure,
quite tired after his incredible performance.
Yeah.
But I've got another funny story actually. um uh it was about I actually saw Tony do a drum clinic. This is so after I was studying at Berklee College of Music, I had the blessing of being able to live in New York for a while. Back in the 90s, this is. And I moved to New York and I studied at a school that's now called the Collective, but back then it was just called Drummers Collective.
Okay.
And it was a drumming school. And uh, there were some great drum teachers there. I got to study with some incredible teachers, mainly a guy called Kim Plainfield. Kim worked with people like Bill Connors. He played live with people like Tanya Maria, the singer. And Kim was a kind of master at the linear type of drumming.
Right.
And so he had a lot of methods with funk linear drumming and that kind of thing. So he was a real master at that type of thing. I also actually ended up doing a bit of studying with Mike Clark, the drummer who is in the Headhunters, and played on some of the Herbie Hancock Headhunters records. And Mike, again, an incredible, drummer. And I actually ended up having a kind of playing session with Mike in one of the drum rooms where there were two drum kits, and got seriously roasted, I would say, at the time. Because I mean, Mike's just got these he's incredible, he's got this way, like he plays traditional grip, but he's got, I don't know what it is, he's got this way of, like, when he plays, singles, or when he solos, he's so loose. It's almost like there's just like it's just so it's so it seems like it's so easy what he's playing, but in fact what he's playing is not easy at all.
Yeah.
To pull off. But he's just so relaxed, in what he does, Mike. And incredible drummer.
Yeah.
Very influential drummer, Mike Clark. And but yeah, so the story is that Tony came to do, when I was studying there, he came to do a drum clinic. And and he basically, he came on stage, and he just literally walked on the stage. All the drum students and teachers were there in this kind of auditorium, where they used to have the drum clinics. And then he just did this incredible performance, like highest energy possible drumming, like, again, like a tornado going off, this incredible, like, powerful performance of drumming. We're all sitting there, like, with our mouths open, and then he stopped. Then, after the performance, he kind of stands in front of the audience, and he's like, okay, has anyone got any questions? And the whole room, kind of went silent, so that's a kind of funny story, because it's almost like, what can you ask Tony?
Yeah.
What can you ask him that's not already been said? When Tony Williams does a drum solo or performance, it's like, you don't really need to ask him any questions,
Yeah.
because if you were listening and tapped into what he's doing, it's all the answers are there. It's like all the wisdom's there in the playing, isn't it? So that was a incredible experience.
I bet. And when you said earlier that after the show he was feeling quite tired, it made me think, by the way you're describing his playing, and the videos I've seen of his playing, it's like where he's like run a marathon. You know, the amount of energy he must
Yeah.
expend while playing. I'm not surprised that he's tired afterwards. That's an incredible story. That's very funny. And I
Yeah.
can, yeah. I mean, I don't know if someone would either have to be very brave or perhaps not really get what happened if they did ask a question. Um, but no, you put it really well. You know, the that turn of phrase you said where all the answers are in the music. That's really good. Um, we this has flown by. This has flown by. We've covered a lot of ground, Ollie, and thank you so much for all of the stories and the insights. And I'm gonna go through everything, and I'm gonna add lots of links in the description to the records that you've been a part of and that you've mentioned, so that if people want to check them out, they can. And I'll also throw in your the Bandcamp um, link, and if there are any other links as well, just throw them my way, and I'll add them to the description. But yeah, it's been a very nice way to start a morning. So thank you so much, Ollie, for the chat.
No, thank you, Dan, and it's a pleasure to work with Drum Dog, and you know, I'd like to also thank Simon for putting us in touch, and the initial meeting we had at the Dorset Drum Festival. I was going to mention that I've been asked to come back and take part in the festival next year, and I know they've got some great headline guys playing. I think it's going to be next year. It's actually in a bigger venue, so I think it's in the Weymouth Pavilion. I might have got that
Oh,
wrong, but
nice.
it's in the theatre
Okay.
next year, and uh, they've got some great guys involved, as they did with the last one. So yeah, I'm actually going to be there, and I'm going to be doing some workshops as well about drum tuning.
Nice.
If you know, if anyone's in the area, then please feel free to, you know, come and come down, and I'll also be doing another short performance, around 20 minutes drum performance as well,
Hmm.
in one of the other areas, and doing these drum tuning workshops. So I think that'll be useful for some people, because I know that, like, I can speak for myself, that back in the day I didn't really have much knowledge about how to tune drums, and it was actually a friend of mine, drummer actually, who was one of my close friends, drum buddies at Berklee College of Music, and he actually taught me how to tune, you know, drums. And so yeah, you know, it's something that's, it's not complicated,
Hmm.
it's not very difficult to learn how to do properly, but it is something that, if you don't know how to do it, it's good to kind of get, you know, have someone show you or advise you on how to do it. So yeah, that's, I'm going to be helping out doing that, and
Amazing. Well,
I'm looking forward to seeing all the other guys,
yeah.
you know, who are performing. As you know, it's going to be a great day, you know, and Tom's doing a great job. You know, he's put in a lot of energy and passion into the whole thing, and I think currently they're doing some like a promotional tour, or some kind of a tour, involving, you know, something to do with that you know, organization.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope
Wonderful.
that's going well too. Yeah.
Nice. Well, and we'll absolutely promote and put some stuff out close to the time. So if anyone's interested in going, they should definitely go along, because it was a lovely day out. Lots of drums. Bring some
Yeah.
earplugs. Um,
Yeah.
all right. Wonderful. Well, thanks again, Ollie, and we'll chat soon.